You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hey everybody, welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, your TV Guidance Counselor. As always, here to traverse the television viewing habits of our collective past, shall we say, using issues of TV Guide magazine as our gateway into the past. This week, my guest is the one and only Mr. Fee Waybill of the legendary band The Tubes. He also has been an actor in his time, was in Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains in a very funny role. He is also, weirdly, if you are familiar with me or this show, you know how big a fan of SCTV I am, and weirdly, he will be, or he was, the first person I've spoken to who appeared on SCTV in almost 6 years of this show. So I am very excited about that, and we discuss that here. If you are checking out this show for the first time because you are a fan of Fees or The Tubes, welcome. My name is Ken Reed. I'm a stand-up comedian and former punk rock musician isn't really the word. I was in a band from Boston, former punk rock. I was an actual rock. From Boston, Massachusetts. This show comes out every week. I talk to all kinds of different people about the television we watched growing up, and that is exactly what we do with Fee this week. Also want to announce, if you're a regular listener of the show, I will be out at Denver Pop Culture Con again at the end of May, last weekend of May, doing panels and walking around, and may get some new enamel pins so that if you find me, you can ask for one and I will give you one. Also, thanks to the Patreon, that is patreon.com/TV Guidance Counselor, I am going to Los Angeles next week for a week or two, and I will be recording episodes there. So thank you very much. It is true, your Patreon donations directly are invested back into the show and help me travel to where the interesting people are. But sometimes interesting people come to New England, and that is the case here with this gentleman, Fee Waybill, the frontman of The Tubes, who were playing a show in Manchester, New Hampshire. I took a drive up north to put the word on the streets and talk to him. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Fee Waybill.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Mr. Fee Waybill, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Yes.
I'm good.
Freshly.
It's not snowing.
It isn't. It was last night, though, when you got in, yeah?
We drove in from Boston, and it was great until we got about 5 miles away.
Yes, everyone made it through safe.
Everyone made it. We all made it safely.
We can make it up to tax-free New Hampshire. And
It is tax-free?
It is, yeah.
Really?
New Hampshire's, I always call New Hampshire the south of the north because it's very, on their license plates, live free or die. It's like this real, like, stay out of my business kind of place. So there's no taxes. No taxes.
That's good. That's a good thing. That's kind of a change of pace from California.
It is very different, yeah.
It really
Although
is different.
you don't want anyone hitting your car because you don't have mandatory car insurance here.
Really?
You can drive without car insurance.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's stunning.
It's kind of a gamble up here. But
That's stunning. I can't believe that.
yeah, it's always interesting.
Well, you can't get 5 feet in California without car insurance.
Yeah, you pulled over license registration.
I grew up in Arizona, and that's kind of the south of the south.
Yes, yeah.
Arizona is about as red, conservative as it comes.
Yeah.
You know, even John McCain, they would nail, they thought he was way too...
It's real liberal.
Way too liberal, John McCain.
Yeah.
And that Jeff Flake said, of course, he bailed, but yeah, we moved, I moved there we moved from Omaha because of a horse. And that's why I love the Western.
Because of a horse?
Because of a horse. Well, not because of a horse, but the horse. My family. I grew up in Omaha. My family had a horse ranch. My dad was. We had a movie theater in town called the Bijou Theater, and we had a horse ranch. We lived outside of town, and my dad had this one horse. Big Palomino parade horse. His name was King Midas.
Okay.
Because he was gold.
Yeah.
And gorgeous. And he was a parade horse, and they had like a silver saddle and the whole 9 yards. And we had a guy that would come and ride him in these parade classes. And at one point, he was champion, 17 states. He was parade champion of 17 states.
Wow.
Back in like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And I just, I have a box full of trophies and plaques and all this kind of stuff that we kept and that I kept. And so my mother hated the cold. And there was two of us, my brother and myself, were born in Omaha. And so finally she said, we have to move. I can't handle it anymore. It's just too cold. And it's always snowing, and it was awful. And so we didn't have very much money. They didn't have money. My mother didn't work. We had this little theater which barely survived. And in fact, I've got this great picture back when the movie Francis the Talking Mule.
Yeah.
When that came out, they sent a mule around to movie theaters to do in-person live appearances of Francis the Mule.
Golden age of ballyhoo.
Really?
Yeah.
And I have a picture of my dad and my mom and all these people standing behind Francis in the lobby of the theater,
And we never know if it really was the real Francis.
No, the real Francis, no. And he didn't talk. My dad said, well, if you really want to do this, then we're going to have to sell King Midas.
Yeah.
And so they sold King Midas, and that enabled them to have enough money to move to Scottsdale, Arizona.
Right.
And so we moved to Scottsdale in like 54, 55, something like that. And
it was still pretty old west out
and it
there,
was very
right?
old west. There was hitching posts.
Yeah.
In town, in downtown Scottsdale, which was just pretty much one main street,
Right.
Scottsdale Road, and the businesses on each side of the street had hitching posts where you could hitch up your horse. And we got horses when we were there, and so I had horses when I was a kid, and we used to ride the horse. I had a horse named Skeeter. And my little brother, had a horse named Sugar. And we used to ride our horses into town and go to on Saturday morning, there was a little movie theater in town. And on Saturday morning, we'd drive to the theater, or ride to the theater, hitch up our horses, and watch Westerns.
Yeah.
And they used to do a lot of, serial type Westerns.
Six Gun
like
Justice. And
the Lone Ranger. And the Cisco Kid, and they used to show those at the movie theater, and so I was always way into the westerns and
the cliffhanger
we were looking at the TV
serials.
guide here. The James Garner Maverick was one of my favorites.
It's amazing how that was the prominent genre for decades.
For decades.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve McQueen, his first gig was Wanted Dead or Alive.
Yeah.
And he was, and he played and they all had to have some kind of gimmick, some kind of special thing. Like Steve McQueen had like a rifle with the barrel cut off, and the stock cut off. So it was like a rifle turned into a pistol,
right?
And with a big wacky holster,
like a RoboCop.
And James Garner in the Maverick was kind of a comedian. He was kind of a smartass.
He was a charming card player. It was basically the same character that he was in Rockford,
right?
Just with a cowboy hat on.
Pretty much, with Rockford with a cowboy hat, and then Jack Kelly would come in as the brother and kind of be the romantic kind of guy, brother guy. And the rifleman we were talking about this, Chuck Connors went on to the series of Branded, and he went from Mr. Hard-Ass Rifleman to the Branded Coward.
Traitor.
Broke his sword. And I never watched Branded much. I couldn't dig it. But
they did actually, and this is one of the things I absolutely wanted to talk to you about too, which this actually transitions nicely in that people listen to the show know how much I love SCTV, and I talk about it all the time. It's one of my favorite shows. Yeah. And weirdly, in the 5 years and 400 people I've had on the show, you're the first person I've had on who's actually been on SCTV.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, God, I have a good story about that.
Cool. Well, it reminds me, Candy did a sketch that was a parody of Branded called Yellow Belly.
Oh, he did?
And
I don't think I saw
it was these weird Western, and he would just be scared and shoot kids. It was like, Yellow Belly, you shot my son. And he's like, oh. It was just like shooting on the back and stuff.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we went up there. We went to Edmonton. We flew up to Edmonton to do the show. And Catherine O'Hara. We did one number with Catherine O'Hara. We did Talk to You Later when she was doing the kind of red torch singer character.
Yes, Lola Heatherton.
Lola Heatherton.
Yep.
Right. We did one bit with her, and then we did the Fish and Musician
Yep, with Candy.
with John Candy, and played Sushi Girl, and so we're in a hotel in Edmonton,
Which is rural Canada for people like Edmonton's like middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
right?
it's the middle of nowhere. It's between it's east of Vancouver. Well, I don't need a geography lesson, but it's east of Vancouver, kind of, and halfway between there and Calgary.
Right.
So it's like above Montana
Right.
or something, in the middle of nowhere. Just cold and flat and awful, and it's just where Gretzky, and that's where I met Gretzky.
Yeah.
Gretzky was a superstar there, and he was a big Tubes fan, and Gretzky, we used to hang out, and we did a big tour. Not to digress, but we did a tour.
All about
once.
digressions.
We did a tour in 1983, and we on an opening for David Bowie.
Okay.
And so it was a tour of the northern of Canada. We
Okay.
started in Montreal, and we did all these Canadian cities, Calgary and Montreal and Toronto and Edmonton.
So we've been
and
serious
Vancouver.
moonlight tour.
It was a serious moonlight tour, and it was the opening act was Peter Gabriel, and then the Tubes and Bowie, and so. In Edmonton, and every night was a football stadium.
Oh, I bet.
Every night was, the Edmonton Huskies stadium.
Right.
And Gretzky came to the show in Edmonton, and we played for like 75,000 people. It was great. And Bowie was a big fan of our band, and he'd let us do all of our costuming and dancers, and he didn't.
I was going to say that would be the thing.
restrict us. Yeah, he loved it. He didn't restrict us at all. And so after the show, Gretzky wanted to take us out for dinner. So me and the two dancing girls, Cindy and Cheryl, and Wayne and Kevin Lowe and Paul Coffey. There was like four guys from the Oilers.
Yeah.
I don't know if Semenko was there. I can't remember. But we went to a Greek restaurant, and they had this guy with them. They had this guy, we called him Big Bucks Bob. And he was like a guy who hung out with Gretzky and was very wealthy. And a couple of times when we were doing the album with David Foster, we would take Big Bucks Bob's, G4.
Right.
Back then it was only a G4. And fly up to Edmonton and hang with Wayne.
Right.
Wayne had a penthouse in this giant apartment building in downtown Edmonton.
Nice.
He was a superstar. So we went to this Greek restaurant, and everybody got really, really drunk.
Uzo.
Really drunk.
Grappa.
And Big Bucks Bob, they were like they got the maitre d' of the place came in with like a big load of plates, and he started breaking plates. And breaking was very, Greek restaurant thing to do, break plates. And Big Bucks Bob got up, and he had a wad of $100 bills. He pulls out of his pocket, and he goes, "I'm Big Bucks Bob," and he throws this wad of $100 bills in the air. And there's a bunch of people in the restaurant. It's not just us. There's a whole bunch of people.
But this is a place that this stuff doesn't happen. This is a rural part of Canada.
And he flips up the whole table full of food, the whole thing, a table of 12 or something. He picks up one side, and all the food would fall. Oh, it was just insane. And it ended up costing him, before we left the restaurant, it ended up costing the guy about $10,000 because he ruined tables and chairs, and he ruined people's dinners, and and God knows how much money he threw up in the air. I don't know.
What a metaphor for wealth.
Really? And I was
this.
going, oh, geez, really? I should be scrambling around. But I thought, no, it's probably not cool.
Yeah.
I'm in front of Gretzky.
I'm going to help you clean this up.
Scrambling around, picking up $100 bills. So we didn't. But
you were up there for SCTV before that?
So
about 1980.
This was later on.
Yeah.
This was the year I think Edmonton won the Stanley Cup.
Right.
I think. But the time we were up there with SCTV, and Roger just told me this the other day that this Catherine O'Hara is in this
Schitt's Creek.
Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, she's great.
Schmitt's Creek or
Schitt's Creek.
Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it. We get Amazon, and I haven't seen it, and I didn't know that Eugene Levy was in it either. Yep. And So I've been watching Godless, catching up on Godless, which is
very good.
Jeff Daniels. It's just great.
Yeah.
I love whatever Western, like Deadwood was my all-time favorite show.
Yeah.
Deadwood. And when after the third season, when they killed off Deadwood, I flipped out. I couldn't believe it.
I had Jim Beaver on the show, who was in Deadwood. He was the bartender.
Oh, yeah.
And his story's fascinating. He started as a writer, and he was writing a book about George Reeves's death, and moved out to California to research it, and became an actor, weirdly. But he writes TV, and Milch asked him if he wanted to write a Deadwood, and he's like, I can't. He's like, I can't even approach it. It's too good.
It was too good, yeah. I mean, McShane was incredible. The dialogue was just incredible. Timothy Oliphant was so great.
Yeah.
And then I went on to watch Justified.
Which Jim was into. Yeah.
That was so great. And I don't know, he's done I don't know what he's done lately, but nothing that really caught me. But
it's interesting to see the Western stuff kind of making a little bit of a comeback with twists. Like Deadwood's, Deadwood is a pretty meat and potatoes Western, just done really well and without any sanitation in more ways than one. Really. But, you get Westworld, and you get these
Westworld.
things. Yeah,
I've been trying to catch up on that. And then there's this, my friend, there's the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Oh, yeah, the Coen brothers.
Yeah, the Coen brothers Western. And a good friend of mine, I play polo. Right, and so I'm still on horses. And a friend of mine, Granger Hines, was in that. He was in one of the vignettes. He was the guy where he killed all the Indians, and then he came back, and the girl he was with had shot herself in the head because she thought she was going to get raped by Indians.
Right, classic Coen brothers.
Yeah, classic. So anyway, that morning, so we're going to do The Fishing Musician with John Candy.
Yeah. And to put it in context for people, this was after SCTV had ended. They had been picked up by NBC to replace SNL. That was what their plan was.
Oh, yeah.
So these 90-minute shows, they never had musical guests before. They made them have musical guests, and SCTV said, we'll only do it if we can actually integrate them into the sketches. We don't want to just go and here's a band.
I didn't know all that.
So they had Roy Orbison, they had Hall & Oates, and they had them all in the sketches, which is just to put in context for people.
It was so cool. So anyway, that morning, so they said, okay, we're going to go to this lake. It's like an hour out of town in Edmonton. And we're going to, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to shoot all day out at this lake. And there's like a cabin out there, and that's where we're going to do it. Okay, great. So we wake up at 6 in the morning, and there 2 limousines show up. And in the back of one of the limousines is John Candy. And so naturally, I want to ride with John Candy. So I jump in that limousine, and I just spit my gum out.
Right. Appropriate response for John Candy mention.
Really. So the other guys get in the other limo, and so I'm in the limo with John, and we head out to this lake, and it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to film all day, and there's a big truck film crew with a bunch of guys and everything. And Candy has got a bag of weed and a case of beer in the back of the limo.
Very Canadian
with us. And so we start slamming down Molson's or Labatt's or whatever the heck, I can't remember, and smoking weed, and we just get shit-faced. And by the time we get out to the thing, we're just going, oh my God. And we're just, and he's like right there. Yeah. It doesn't even faze him. Yeah. I'm completely blotto, and he's, okay, let's go.
He's a professional.
He's a total pro. And it was amazing. And so we spent the day on these stupid little boats out on this river, pulling up, we're supposed to be fishing. Yeah. And we're pulling up boots,
right? Tires
and anything with fish.
And this is all like B-roll too for the sketch.
Oh yeah. And the film guys are in the other rowboat, and they're filming it all. And there's no script, there's no nothing.
Of course,
we're just yakking away and talking and bullshitting. And then we go to the next scene is inside the lodge thing, and then there's some stupid scene about he's presenting a plaque to us, which is the brass bass, which is a fish on a plaque. And we've got this, and they bring in like 100 pounds of raw fish, and they throw it on a table, and I'm supposed to sing sushi at the same time I'm chopping up this fish,
Which is not something you've practiced.
and putting rice. They get a big bowl of rice, so I'm slicing fish open, pulling out the guts, and slamming in a bunch of rice and eating it raw on camera, and trying to sing sushi at the same time.
Would pull it off.
It was just insane.
Did they just pitch that to you and you're like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, okay, no
I'll
problem.
give it a go.
Yeah.
But you had done, was Fabulous Stains after that? Or was it around the same time? Because you had done some acting stuff around that time.
That was, I can't remember that.
Might have been
I think it was
81,
after.
maybe 81, 82.
1980 was the Fabulous Stains.
Okay, so it might have been just maybe a year after.
And that was once again in Canada, in Vancouver. And that's, I got a good story with that too. Lou Adler was and Lou was totally cool. And we would like go to his trailer after the shooting day and smoke joints. And one night, he's got a G5,
of course.
One night after the shoot, he goes, "Okay, come on, we're going to go meet Jack at the Seattle Supersonics game where the Lakers are playing." So we get in the plane, we fly to Seattle, and we sit with Jack Nicholson on the bench,
of course,
with the Lakers playing the Supersonics, and then we go to a restaurant with Jack, smoke pot all night long, and eat at this private restaurant. And then we get in the plane, fly back to Vancouver, and go to work the next day.
Yeah.
And so anyway, there's this one scene in the movie I play the lead singer of a heavy metal band, the Metal Corpses.
Yeah.
And the Metal Corpses are on tour with this young, good-looking band, the Looters.
Yes.
Which stars
Steve Jones, right?
Steve Jones, the two Sex Pistols, Steve Jones, Paul Cook.
And is Ray...
and Ray Winston,
yes, Ray Winston
was the lead singer guy. Had just come from Quadrophenia. And the actual real actor, the only actual real actor in the entire cast, and he'd only done 2 movies or something. And Diane Lane right from 16 Candles.
Yep.
This girl named Marin Cantor, who had never really acted before, and Laura Dern. And it was Laura Dern's first movie, and Laura was like 16, and she had like a handler, like a person.
She's Hollywood royalty.
Yeah, she was, and whereas Diane was like walking around half naked all the time, and everybody in the whole place was hitting on her. Mainly Ray.
Yeah. She's like 15 or 16.
Yeah, she was 15 or 16 and gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so the scenario is the Corpses are on tour and they're has-beens, and the Looters are up-and-coming punk band, and we play a bunch of music, and the Tubes wrote a song for it, and the Looters guys, they played a song. So anyway, there's this one scene, and Vince Welnick was in it. Vince played the guitar player, and I played the lead singer. And of course, it was all lip sync.
Yeah, and it's like a Kiss style, like it's very theatrical, makeup-y.
Oh yeah, and I had on like bad Kiss makeup.
Yeah,
white face with black cutouts.
Yeah,
it was like Kiss on a budget.
Right, store brand Kiss.
Right, and so there's this one scene where we're supposed to be scoring coke, right? And I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Oh yeah,
you've seen the movie
many times.
Well, anyway, in Canada, you have to hire 30% Canadians.
Right.
That's part of their deal. And so the guy that they hired to be the coke dealer was a Canadian guy. And so the prop man comes and he gives us this bindle of inositol, which is the stuff they cut coke with.
Right.
It's not really
it's vitamin C or something.
It's baby laxative.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah.
Oh, awful. And so we rehearse and we go, okay, great. Okay, so let's shoot it now. And so like the guy playing the dealer, and so it's me and Vince and the dealer in this club talking about scoring coke and buying. And I said, well, how much is it? And the guy goes, well, it's $250 a gram. And I went, oh, really? Could I get an eighth?
Yeah.
And so before we get ready to actually roll the camera, the guy goes, okay, look, I'm not snorting this shit. Okay, this is crap. And it turns out the guy's really a coke dealer. And the guy puts the inositol in one pocket and he pulls out real coke out of the other pocket.
Of course.
And so we do the whole scene snorting real coke, right? And I was not a coke snorter. I had a miserable experience in 1974 where I did a bunch of coke before a gig and I lost my voice.
Yeah.
Because it just froze my
weird,
vocal cords.
yeah.
And I lost it and I completely ruined the show we did. And I just went, okay, well I'm never doing this shit again.
Yeah. Never.
And I'm in, this is 6 years later and I haven't done it since. And I'm trying to be cool, and we're snorting this coke and okay, well then cut, and then we'll do another, then they move the cameras and they change the lighting and they do this point of view and they do, no, snort some more coke. Then they do this point of view and then they snort some more coke and then they cut and they do like 8 different camera angles, right? And we're just, by this time I'm completely
on the
drooling.
ceiling, yeah.
My mouth is dry. I'm, oh my God, I was just completely gone. And we get down to one more take. And they okay, this is going to be the master, from the blah blah blah, the last take.
Yeah.
And the dealer guy comes and goes, look, dude, he goes, I'm out of coke. I don't have any more coke. I can't do this. I can't do this scene, and I'm not snorting this inositol. And I'm going, well,
it's one time.
What are we going to do? He goes, you got to give me some coke. You got to get me some coke. I can't do it. I'm not doing it. You got to get me some coke. And I'm just going, oh God. And so I kind of take Lou to the side. I said, Lou, this guy, turns out this guy's really a coke dealer. And we've been snorting coke this entire time. And now he's out. We've snorted his whole gram. And he won't do the scene.
He's basically a glorified extra, this guy. He's in like a 2-minute scene.
Right. It's probably the only gig he ever had, other than being a coke dealer.
Right.
And Lou goes, okay, no problem. And he whips in his pocket and he pulls out a bottle of coke.
My private reserve.
Right. And I'm just going, okay.
That's 1980.
Yeah, 1980. And I mean, I probably shouldn't say that, but Lou was a great guy. I'm sure Lou's cool.
But it was the time. I mean, that was pretty standard. I had Penelope Spheris on, and she was like, in the 70s, she had a music video company, and you'd go in and do an interview, and they'd have the secretary come in and do your nose for you. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And she's like, yeah, that's how it was in the industry.
So we did it. We gave the coke, and he did it, and we went, okay, great. And then the one other funny thing that happened in that, and the movie, and then this Nancy Dowd, the woman who wrote the script, she quit halfway through the movie because Stephen Paul wouldn't say any of her lines, and every other word was fuck.
That sounds like them.
Fuck, man, fucking fuck. And she kept saying, you can't say fuck all the time. Oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
And they didn't give a shit. And Paul Simonon was the bass player from The Clash.
From The Clash. And sings Guns of Brixton.
So she got so upset, she left the project, and they just went on and said fuck every other word and finished the movie. And then it ended up not getting released by Paramount because there was 14,000 fucks in the script. But so there's one scene where, we're in the bus and we've got this fake tour bus, beat to hell tour bus, and it's the morning after a gig. And I am, at least Lou, my name was Lou Corpse.
Yes.
And I'm completely fried, and I've done drugs all night long, and I'm beat and wiped out, and I've got drool hanging all over my mouth, and I'm completely gone. And I'm sitting in the bus, and the looters are in the back. And so there's some dialogue about, that Ray is giving me shit.
Right.
Going, oh, you're such a lame fuck, and I'm just going, oh, fuck you, you piece of shit, you don't know shit, blah, blah, blah. And so there's one scene where he gets up and he walks to the front of the bus and he turns, and I just going, I say something and pisses him off. He turns back around and he's supposed to hit me, pretend to hit me in the eye. And, okay, and so we rehearse, and I'm sitting there looking forward in the bus, and the camera is like in the front of the bus facing back.
Yep.
So it's got on my face, and so they roll. So we're rolling action. So we roll, and we're staying on the lines, and then Ray gets up, and he turns around, and he comes back, and then he just, as hard as he can, he hits me.
Right,
he really hits me right in the eye, in the left eye, just bam.
Yeah.
And I just. Just going, And the cameraman's going, keep rolling, keep rolling. It's great. It's great. Keep rolling. And I'm going, and I'm supposed to try to say my lines, and, my eye is like instantly swelling and closed because the guy has just clocked me seriously. And, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling. Oh, God. And so finally we end the scene, and Ray just goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, man. I just completely lost it." And I said, "Yeah,
I
so
noticed."
Method. Oh, thanks a lot. And then we ended up, we were shooting out of order.
Yeah.
So the next day
Black guys
was supposed to be a scene that was the day before that.
Right.
So they had to change everything and change all the shooting schedules and wait until,
you don't have a
my
shiner
giant
anymore.
black eye went away.
Man.
Oh, it was so classic.
It's funny how people are like, oh, the glamour of the movies, but this is all probably way worse than most road stories from being in a band.
A couple of times, and the Steve and Paul, so we hung out together, Steve and Paul and I, and we used to go out to bars in Vancouver, and these guys loved to drink.
Yeah.
And they got really hammered. And Sex Pistols were a pretty big deal at the time. People knew them.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd go into a bar, and these people would start hitting on them, and girls would start hitting on them, and they're drunk, and they're going, "Yeah, baby, come to my room," and then their lumberjack boyfriend would come walking up going, "Hey, we're hitting on my, what the fuck, man? Hitting on my girl." And a couple of times I had, okay, guys, we're leaving. Get a cab. We're leaving right now before we get pounded into wood pulp.
Yeah, you can't take these guys.
This is the Great White North.
These guys knock down trees with their hands.
Really? Yeah. So we bailed out a couple of times, but that was really funny.
Simenon, I mean, that was when London Calling came out that year. So it was just huge.
They were big. They were a big deal, and I just Steve has a radio show in L.A.
Yeah, in L.A. Yeah.
Jonesy's Jukebox. I just did it not too long ago, and I hadn't talked to him in a long time, and it was great.
He's doing good. He's
back over, talked all those stories, and
his book is very good as well.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. Everybody's doing a book. My friend Steve Lukather just did a book, and I'm working on a book. Me and my wife are working on a book, and it's called Released on OR.
Excellent.
Because I was.
Yeah.
And but it's big. It's a great big book full of pictures, and my mother kept everything.
That's awesome.
And then when my mother died and I went to the house, I found these 10 boxes full of Tubes reviews and pictures and magazines and everything that had ever had the Tubes in.
Did that surprise you? Like, did you know that she was keeping that stuff, or was it kind of a shock?
I did know, but I didn't realize to what extent.
Right.
Sometimes I'd send her stuff and go, "Oh, hey, Mom, we were, we had got a good review in this gig," but she had a ton. So we brought all it back, and about the last year, Elizabeth has been working on putting it into this giant scrapbook thing, huge pictures. It's really cool.
Oh, I'm excited to see
that.
It's
going to be really cool
because it's interesting that you're doing that movie with the Sex Pistols guys and that sort of first generation of punk bands, but the Tubes and I kind of put you guys in that same category as like Devo and the Residents and these sort of pre-punkish bands that weren't necessarily maybe musically punkish, but were doing that. It was that art kind of FU were kind of gonna mess with everything.
I used to do a parody character, Johnny Bugger, instead of Johnny Rotten, and do like a pretend to spit and everything and put safety pins in my face and stuff and try to be real punky. And then we had a bit where one of the crew guys would start to heckle us.
Oh yeah,
and
in the
we'd
audience.
Plant him in the audience, right? And he'd come up to the front of the stage and he'd start to heckle me, and I'd reach down. And he was a little guy. His name was Mike Springer, and I'd pick him up off the stage, and he had a blood bag in his cheek. And I would pretend to hit, although I never really hit him. It was good. But I would pretend to hit him, and he would squirt blood all over the place. And boy, the people bought it. They bought it. They couldn't,
because you guys were doing like sort of Kaufman-y stuff at that time, or like there was a comedy element of the Groundlings people you guys kind of intermingled, and the LA Connection, and like all that sort of overlap, and it was fascinating.
I used to take an improv class. I really loved it with a guy named Bill Hudnut. And in LA, and we still do that. I mean, I still do crazy stuff, and Mr. Hate goes crazy, and Quaalude, pukes on the front row of the audience, and it's just, we originally. So I grew up on a horse.
Yeah,
I grew up on a horse watching all these westerns. I mean, even the old, like, remember Sky King?
Yeah.
Which was a Western
real
about a guy who
sanitized,
had a
yeah.
little Cessna flying around.
Yeah.
And Fury,
Yep.
was the guy.
horse.
I can't remember what the guy's name. One of his first gigs, the guy that was in Airplane, the pilot guy.
Oh man, he used to host Biography.
Right. Robert.
Peter Graves.
Peter Graves.
Yes,
Peter Graves, right.
yes.
He was in Fury. And even in Rifleman, Johnny Crawford, turns out to be a singer,
Yeah.
and so, and I watched that, and I watched Wanted Dead or Alive, and I watched The Virginian, and I watched Death Valley Days,
Yeah.
and the Rawhide series,
Yep, Wagon
and
Train.
Wagon Train, and
It's fascinating that because everyone I know of that generation watched all the westerns.
Oh, yeah.
But you're the first person I've heard that actually lived in a place that wasn't too far removed from that.
No,
it wasn't a
They used
fantasy
to
show.
shoot them. They used to shoot the westerns there. In fact, we had my dad was a chief engineer of a big resort hotel. One of the first resort hotels in Scottsdale is called the Valley Ho, and he was the chief engineer. And so that enabled us to have horses, and we had a horse place. And at one point, we had a rental stable where we would rent people horses, and it's unheard of today, but we'd rent somebody a horse and we'd just send them out.
See you later.
See you. Well, just how many hours you want? Okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And we'd just ship them out into the desert
Very
somewhere.
expensive thing.
And we, who knows when they came back. And but they used to, every once in a while, they would use that for a movie shoot.
Right.
And do some Western out there. And there was places all over Phoenix that they used to do Western shoots for.
Little ghost towns.
And, ghost towns and stuff. And then I ended up, before we moved to San Francisco, I ended up moving to a ghost town, a place called Jerome, which was a ghost town in northern Arizona.
Oh, wow.
A bunch of us hippies, I kind of got discouraged with that's another whole story. That's a whole other podcast.
You were dropping out.
I dropped out. I tuned in, dropped out, and a bunch of us moved away from Phoenix. I quit. I was going to Arizona State. I quit. I had gotten busted for smuggling marijuana across the border, which is another story. A half a gram. I was smuggled a half a gram, and so that kind of killed me.
The end of civilization.
It was bad, and that I quit school. I ended up. This was '68. I ended up being eligible for the draft.
Right.
And so in '68, I had to go for my induction physical, and I'd been living in the mountains for in this ghost town for 6 months, and I had no shower, no shave, no underwear,
The mountain man.
big hair, and everyone was freaking out because if you go to Vietnam, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so my friend, he gave me 4 hits of Owsley LSD. He said, "Take this right before you go into the draft board.
You won't be
They
picked."
won't want you."
Yeah.
And I did. I took 4 hits of LSD.
Wow.
Walked into the draft board in Phoenix and just went nuts.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me like, "We don't want to have anything
isn't gonna
to do
work."
with you."
Yeah.
"What are you on?" I said, "I'm not on anything. I'm always like this."
High on life.
Right. This is me. They went, "Okay, well, you're out. You're done." And so then I actually lived my dream. I lived in Jerome for a while, a bunch of hippies. And
So it's just abandoned Western.
it was a mining town right outside Cottonwood, Arizona.
Okay.
And it was on the side of a mountain called Mingus Mountain. And there used to be a copper mine there, the Phelps Dodge copper mine. And they mined all the copper out of the mountain. So then they left.
Yeah.
And so all these miners used to have these little shacks on the side of the mountain. No electricity, no running water, no indoor bathroom.
Right.
And they abandoned them.
Yeah.
So a bunch of us hippies went up there to Jerome in '68, and we just took over these shacks. And everybody got their own shack. I had my own shack.
Not using them.
Right. And the town didn't care.
Yeah.
There was an old, the only people left in town were 100
Yeah.
and been living there forever, and it kind of became a tourist town, but because it was a ghost town,
Yeah.
And I lived there in this crappy little shack and had 8 cents in my pocket for about a year. And actually I only lasted about I lasted about 5 months, 6
That's
months.
impressive.
And I couldn't handle it anymore. And I went to work for a cowboy. I became a cowboy.
An actual cowboy.
An actual cowboy. And I worked for a guy named Dave Perkins, and he had a cattle ranch. And he was one of there's actually a town called Perkinsville up there.
Okay.
His father was a big patriarch of the whole Verde Valley. He had 5 sons and gave each of them a gigantic ranch.
Yeah.
So
It was
this
1,000
guy
acre.
had a ranch. He had 250,000 acres.
Wow. Okay.
It was Forest Service and BLM land.
Yeah.
And a ranch house and horses, and he was kind of a progressive guy, and he hired these 2 hippies with long-haired, vegetarian, long-haired hippies to be cowboys. And he paid me $50 a month with room and board.
Right.
I got to live at the ranch, gave me a horse, and I would ride the range. I would go out in the morning and ride around, and especially in the spring and the fall, you'd want, and the funny thing was, the Forest Service would only let you have, based on how much food there was,
Right.
in the per acre. They would only let you, so in 250,
For the horses,
yeah,
for the cows.
for the cows.
Yeah.
They would only let you have so many cows per acre based on how much there was to eat. So out of 250,000 acres, all they would let you have is 150 cows, because that was how much food there wasn't.
Okay.
150 cows.
That's a lot of space for that
on
many.
250,000 acres. Right. So every year we'd round up all the cows and we'd bring them in, and then the bull would fuck all the cows.
Yeah.
And then they get pregnant, and then they send them back out there, and then 6 months later you go out there and round them up and bring in and take their calves away
Right.
and cut their balls off and sell them for hamburger.
Right.
You know, and so that's what I would do.
Did it live up to the cowboy mythology of the shows? Like, were you feeling like, I'm doing it?
Well, yeah, I thought it was pretty cool, man. I was riding the range, and I would sleep out in, you know, and it wasn't as hard as it sounds, because there was like certain spots where they would hang out, where there was
Right.
water.
Yeah.
Because it was the desert of Arizona. There's no water.
Right.
So we would make these water tanks. You take a bulldozer and push up the earth and make this tank where when it rained, water would collect.
Right.
And then there was the river. There was the Verde River also. So you'd either find them around the river or you'd find them at these water tanks.
Right.
And so they would set up little corrals, temporary corrals around the water tanks, and then you would herd them into the corrals, and you'd take the calves, and then you'd cut their balls off.
Yeah. Did they do it like, I knew someone who worked on a sheep farm, and they used to put a rubber band around them until they fell off.
No.
It was like a weird.
No, the way they did it, they had a thing called an emasculator.
Was that what it was actually called?
Emasculator.
Oh, wow.
And they would take the ball sack and they would cut a hole in the bottom of it, and they'd squeeze the ball out, and then they would take this thing that looked like some kind of,
It's like a cigar cutter,
like
right?
a cigar cutter,
Yeah.
and they would just cut off the cord
Yeah.
that was holding the testicles on, and they would hold it, and it would like seal it.
Yeah.
You know, it would, so it wouldn't bleed.
Right.
It would
Cauterize it or something.
Cauterize it. They didn't actually use hot,
Heat, but it
wasn't hot, but just the way the thing worked, it would squeeze it together, and they would hold it long enough to where it would,
Oh, I got you, yeah.
meld together, and it wouldn't bleed. And then they'd have these balls, these we called them, or they
Oysters?
called them mountain oysters.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're a cowboy, you had to eat them.
Right. That's like the hazing that you have
Right,
to do. Yeah.
right. And I was like a vegetarian cowboy, and he go, "Oh, come on, man, you got to eat them." I go, "Oh,
Do you have any tofu
you
balls?"
Pussy, come on." Eat that meal. And so they would slice them up like sausage, and Jimmy Dean style, and fry them up.
Yeah.
And you'd have them for breakfast. So I did that for, about a year and a half, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And we'd sleep out in the range,
Yeah.
carry a sleeping bag, and of course, there was no guns or anything.
Right.
No cowboy stuff.
There's
No shooting or anything. But
No looter poachers.
no, we'd just hang out.
How do you get from there to being in a band in San Francisco?
Well,
That's a big leap.
Roger's band, the Red, White, and Blues band, they were a pretty popular band in Phoenix. And before I had left, when I was going to school and to college and stuff, I used to always go see them.
Right.
And there was a club called the VIP, And there was a little club in town. Everybody played there. And so I would be the guy hanging around afterwards. And, hey, man, you guys are really cool, you know. And I wanted to be in a band. And so when I moved to the mountains, I got a hold of them. And I said, man, you know, we're living in this. And after a while, I had moved from Dave's ranch house to this old place called the Packard Ranch.
Okay.
And it was right on the confluence of the Sycamore Creek and the Verde River. So there was a big swimming hole. It was an ancient cabin, you know, no power, no water, no bathroom, made of hand-hewn logs.
Yeah.
I mean, adobe and logs. I mean, it was amazing. And 4 of us lived there, Mike and Tony and Nancy and me. And me and Mike had worked for Perkins, and so we moved from Dave's place to this little ranch. So then we would take the truck in the morning to work,
right? And
so we had this little. And so I said, come on out to the ranch on the weekend, and you know, be sure to bring drugs.
Yeah, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, be sure to bring some pot along with you, hopefully, and just hang. And so they would do that. They would come up to the mountains and bring their equipment truck, and they would bring a generator and set the generator up in the desert and play to 4 of us.
Right.
Nobody.
Private concert.
Just play to the world.
Yeah.
Play to the cactus. And they loved it. They thought it was so cool. And we thought it was just the greatest thing of all time.
Amazing.
You know, it was really cool. And so in the fall of 1969, Prairie, it was all Prairie. Prairie graduated from high school, and he was an artist. And Prairie got a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute.
Okay.
And he says, well, I got to go.
Yeah.
And then I got a 3-year free ride to the Art Institute. And I want to be an artist.
San Francisco in 69 is like ground zero San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was the 2 years after the Summer of Love. And it kind of went from love to drugs and disaster.
Love to love drugs to Robert Crumb.
Yeah, to crime. Exactly. And so they had decided we're going to move to San Francisco to start school in September of 69. Mm-hmm. And it was Roger and Prairie and this guy named David Killingsworth was the bass player. And they had no one to help them. And they came up and they told me what they were going to do. And they didn't say, hey, we want you to hump our shit.
Right.
Dave said, I want you to play logs in the band. I want you to be in the band and play logs. And I just went, and I wasn't a drummer. I had just been a singer my whole life.
Right.
My mother was a singer. I was a singer in school and an actor. And I went, well, logs? And he goes, yeah, we're these big hollowed out kind of African logs. And we're going to add this kind of African feel to it. Oh, really? Okay. And I'm just, whatever. Yeah. I was ready to get out.
Yeah.
You know, I did the cowboy thing. I did the hippie, you know, I did it. And
lived a couple lifetimes already.
I just went, okay, no, I'm ready. So we moved to San Francisco. Of course, I never saw a log, ever. I was immediately
these logs I was promised.
Right. Immediately, I became the roadie, the cook, the truck driver, the doctor.
Yeah.
I was everything. And so we moved to San Francisco in 69, the fall of 69. Prairie started going to art school, and we lived in this little abandoned, condemned house in the Sunset District, 48th and Noriega. It's a little 2-bedroom house built on sand.
Of course.
And it's just nothing but sand and flies and fleas, and it's disgusting.
Is that where Catherine Bigelow, didn't she live in there somewhere?
She did, and I don't remember where she lived, but she
was part of that.
She was in there, yeah. And we used to, we had a guy, a friend of ours, and we used to practice, or the band used to practice in the garage, and the thing was made of paper, so the whole neighborhood could hear you practicing, and people would hang out outside the garage and hang around. And this guy down the street came over, and he was Steve Miller's roadie.
Okay.
Steve ended up, I can't remember his last name. He ended up being the helicopter pilot that was flying the helicopter that crashed with Bill Graham.
Wow.
Later on down the years later.
Yeah.
Steve, gosh, I can't remember his name. But he died, and Bill died, and Bill's girlfriend died, and everybody died. But he had Steve Miller's gear parked at his house,
Which is pretty high quality.
high
gear.
end. It was all Sennheiser, this massive racks of stuff, and we had just a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Little Fender Showman, and,
Sears,
and he used to let
Silvertone.
us use. We'd get these little crappy gigs at like a CYO party, and. We'd show up with Steve Miller's gear, and it would be 100 people, and we'd have a wall of Steve Miller's equipment.
Yeah.
Of course, Steve never found out.
No.
But so we lived in San Francisco, and a bunch of people from Arizona would come up and visit all the time. And Bill's band, the Beans, eventually they thought, well, this is really great. So the Beans moved to San Francisco, and they had their own house, and they started trying to do gigs, and eventually Roger ended up firing the bass player, Dave Killingsworth. He fired because he used to smoke hash all day long, and he lived in the garage and couldn't make it to the rehearsal in the garage.
Trying to sleep, guys.
Yeah. And so they got pissed off, and they ended up firing him, and he moved to Hawaii and became a pot grower or something. I don't know. And they started trying to find another bass player, and they auditioned all kinds of guys. And I used to come down, and while we were trying to find another bass player, they wanted to play. So I had been in I knew all the songs because I was the roadie. And I had no idea. I mean, it was, put the ON switch in the ON position.
Right.
That was the limit of my roadie technology. And so I would go down and sing. And I would sing because David was a singer and Roger was a singer. So I go down and sing with them. And we ended up never being able to find a bass player. And we had a manager, this guy, John Spear, who used to be the original drummer of Alice Cooper's band.
Okay, yeah.
And Bill's band had a manager, Lauren Thompson. And finally, and we had gigs, but no band, and they had a band, but no gigs. And so the two managers got together and they went, hey, why don't you guys join our band?
I have a solution here.
Yeah, and we'll do your gigs and you can be in our band. Oh, okay, great. And so we did, and we put everything together, and I was kind of the odd man out because they already had three guys acting as roadies, and they said, well, okay, well, you can be the background singer. Because Roger said, well, he's a pretty good singer. Let him sing background vocals. Yeah. And so I did. So I started as the background singer, and we would do gigs together. And then eventually, Bill was kind of the leader of the band, and so there was two guitar players, two drummers, because Bill's band was drums, bass, keyboard, guitar.
Right. You had two of everything but a bass player.
Right. And he was the singer, and we didn't have a lead singer. So he kept saying, you sing too damn loud, and you're only the background singer. So why don't you sing lead on this? And so we started doing bits where I would sing El Paso,
right,
and be the cowboy.
Right, you'd be a character.
Yeah, I started doing characters, and I would sing El Paso, and then in the part of the song where he gets shot, Marty Robbins, I would tape a bag of stage blood under my shirt, and then I'd smack it when I get shot, and blood would squirt all over the audience. Stage blood. And they loved that. And so then I did another bit. I used to do Carmen Miranda. And we did a song called Brazil, and I would sing it in Portuguese, and I would have fruit on my head, and during the song, eat the fruit. And I had maracas for tits, and then we did James Brown as a Mexican cab driver.
Oh, I'm
Jesus Bongo. I don't know how that ever fit, and so we just started doing characters and then I kind of started, then I developed Quaalude and the Big Shoes, and we just. And here we are, God, 100 years later.
Well, it's interesting because, I think of Remote Control or that record, or even the earlier stuff where, you're of the first generation of people that grew up on television in this popular culture that then made their own. So it's that because everyone before that they were sort of inventing this stuff for the first time, and they had worked in TV, but there were radio people or it was the first time. So you start to see that with the Devo guys, or even the B-52s, where you're sort of mashing up all this 20 years of popular culture
Right.
and kind of spitting it back out as this
Right.
new weird thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's fascinating.
And, Prairie was the artist, and Prairie and Mike did all the graphics and stuff, and I was the actor, and I was doing the stupid, crazy characters, and and like in What Do You Want from Life, we went through all these, the Dynagym,
Right.
all these TV, the fishing, the Popeil Pocket
Yeah.
Fisherman, and all this, all these whacked out things that you would see on TV, and the funny, one of the reasons we watched TV all day long in Arizona was because it was so hot. It was 150 outside.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And so we'd stay inside watching TV Westerns all day long. And, it was also, which is one of the kind of twisted things that, it was a test market,
Right.
Phoenix, because they figured Phoenix, it was a big city, but it was not influenced by Los Angeles
Right.
or the East or Chicago or New York, really.
Right.
So they could try stuff out there that we'd never heard of.
Right.
Like I think one of the first fast food places, McDonald's or Jack in the Box or something, they had tried out there. And they tried out trampoline parks.
Oh,
where
which are
they
big
would-
now.
Which are big now, but back then
Yeah.
they have a giant, we had these huge malls with
Right.
because there's just so much space.
Yeah.
And so you'd have a parking lot that was like 30-acre parking lot. And so what they would do was they just cut a big hole in the asphalt and stretch a trampoline across it. And that was it.
It's like a trap.
like a pit.
Yeah.
And the sides were asphalt. There was no
Perfect.
padding, no nothing. And they'd sell these people would jump up and down, and then they'd fly up, bam, onto the asphalt and break
It'll
your ass.
rework this. There
It
was a few people I know from Phoenix. There was a show called Wallace and Ladmo.
Yeah, Wallace and Ladmo.
Which it's funny how, to your point of it being sort of as far away from everywhere as you can get almost.
Yeah.
But that show, which was very, very local, was a local kid show.
Oh yeah,
It was on for
it was
like
a cartoon
40
show.
years. Yeah.
it was a cartoon show, but it was these two guys, Wallace and Ladman, and we were on it a couple of times. I remember I went on
As
it.
the Tubes later.
No,
or as
never as
kids.
the Tubes,
Okay.
but as kids. I
Yeah.
was in the audience a number of times. And one time, I remember I was in the audience, and Wallace and Ladmo had a box of puppies, and they said somebody left these puppies, and does anybody want? And I took one of the puppies home. His name was Robbie. It was my first dog. I'll never forget it.
Your parents send you to a TV taping and you show up with
Right,
a
and
puppy.
I come home with a puppy. But Wallace and Ladmo was kind of this goofy guy that wore like big fat ties and a top hat.
Yeah.
And he was kind of big ears and a big nose, and he was kind of goofy. And they could do cartoons, but in between the cartoons, they would do this kind of stand-up bit.
Yeah, it's like vaudeville shtick.
And it was way above the head of most of the kids watching it. And that's why, hipsters and people thought it was so cool. And then what they had, this guy named Mike Condello was one of they had a band that would come on and they would play vegetables. And
no logs.
And Mike Condello, ended up being a real guitar player in bands, and had done a number of. He actually played on a Tubes album, the first Tubes album, and but in Phoenix, it was. I mean, they were a big deal in Phoenix, and they were on forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And
it's funny that there's many people I know who are in bands from Arizona, like the Meat Puppets or they're like, Wallace and Ladmo, that was the first Hollywood I ever experienced. Like it's like that's showbiz,
Yeah, they were so cool, and it was all pretty much ad lib. It was all ad lib, and they just sit there and bullshit all day. Oh, it was so great, and gosh, I don't think the Tubes ever played. I can't remember. It was so long ago. I can't remember. I don't think we ever played on Wallace.
Yeah, they would occasionally have like weird stuff. Like anyone with a local tie would sometimes show up on that show.
Oh yeah.
Because they had a lot of time to fill. To your point, it was all ad lib. But I mean, the Tubes were, by the '80s, you guys were on. You did every show. You guys were on a lot of shows, right?
We did Tom Snyder.
Yeah.
We did all kinds of stuff. I remember our stupid manager turned down Saturday Night Live. He said, "Oh, that show's never going to happen."
Yeah.
And we had a chance to be on Saturday Night Live in one of the early episodes when Chevy Chase and those were all
75,
the
the first
originals.
cast, yeah.
No, he turned it down.
Of course,
no,
yes.
Never got it.
Sounds like nothing.
So we didn't do it. Oh, Jesus.
Is that the biggest thing that you're like, oh, I wish we had done?
Well, that's one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's
for
gonna be up
sure.
there.
That was. We got rid of those guys.
Yeah.
Those two managers. The guy was a cab driver.
Okay.
Turned manager, and he managed Brewer and Shipley. Remember?
No, I don't know.
One took over the
Oh,
line.
yes,
Sweet
yes.
Jesus.
Yep.
That was his claim to fame.
Also not on SNL.
Yeah, right. Brewer and Shipley. So we got rid of him, and then we went to another manager, and then another manager, and then we had a crazy Welshman, Ricky Farr, as a manager, who took us to England for the first time, and England is a big deal for us.
Yeah.
We do really well over there.
You did Top of the Pops, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, many times,
Yeah,
right?
we did The Tube, we did Top of the Pops,
Yeah.
we did Old Grey Whistle Test, we did all those iconic...
Did you ever do Music Laden, that one in Germany?
Oh, yeah. We did
yeah.
Music Laden. In fact, we have a DVD we're selling
cool.
at the gig from a Music Laden show in 1981.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And yeah, we did we just did everything. We went there. In fact, last time we were there, we opened for Alice. We did big 20,000 seaters. We played Wembley with Alice last time we were there, which was a fall of a year ago, and we haven't been back lately.
I started doing stand-up over there and lived over there for a long time. My
you
wife's
did?
from there, and we haven't been back in 10 years. I'm going back this summer for a brother's wedding, but I'm like,
cool.
I'll be back. Cool to be back, and I'll do some gigs. And
I
whatever.
love it. London's so
Yeah.
great. We had a great time last time we went, and looking forward to try to get we actually just signed with a big management company. You mentioned Hall & Oates earlier.
Yeah.
The guys that manage Hall & Oates.
Oh, cool.
Jonathan Wolfson, his name is.
Yeah.
He manages Hall & Oates and Loverboy and Tower of Power. They just took on. And they just took on the Tubes. And we haven't had an actual management company for 10, 15 years. We've just been doing it ourselves, and I've been doing it, and we all do it together.
Yeah.
And we run our own website. We do our own photo. Prairie does all the artwork and all the T-shirts, and I do all of the. We have an agent, obviously,
Right.
but I work with the agent and putting together shows and stuff. And
But it's kind of back to the beginning, kind of what you're doing.
yeah,
First
and
doing the art.
we just never found anybody that just. But this guy is a genius. This guy's incredible. He brought Hall & Oates back from. I mean, I thought they had broken up.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they were done. I didn't even know they had. But apparently, they never did.
They did Boston Garden recently.
Yeah,
last year.
they're huge.
Yeah.
They're just right now. They're doing a week in Vegas.
Yeah.
A residency
Elvis style.
in Vegas. So that'd be cool to do.
Alice Cooper has my favorite Elvis story ever. I don't know if he's ever told you his story about meeting Elvis.
No, I don't know that story.
He was in Vegas, and they played a show, and he got word that Elvis wants to meet him. So they're like, Elvis wants to meet you, come to this hotel at this time. So he goes, and he's waiting at the elevator, and it's also waiting to meet Elvis is Chubby Checker and Linda Lovelace. So they all go up, and Elvis Presley goes to him. He's like, "Yeah, you do that thing with that snake?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wish I thought of that, man." And so he's like, "Okay." So then Elvis says to him, "Hey, you want to learn some karate?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." So Elvis opens a drawer in the kitchen and takes out a loaded .38, and he puts it in Alice's hand, and he's like, "I'm sure I had to take a gun away from a man." And he's sitting with his gun. He's like, "What?" And he says, before I could even think of anything, I'm on the ground. Elvis has his boot in my neck, and he's got the gun. He's like, "And that's how you do it." And then they all just left. It was like the whole thing.
That is so
I'm like,
whack.
Yeah, I'm like,
I never
oh,
heard that story.
Yeah,
I've known Alice. We all grew up. He went to school in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And he was in a band called the Earwigs, and we always help. He's got a great a charity foundation called the Solid Rock Foundation, where he helps kids. He's got like an after school program where they can come and do art or music or dance, and it's all totally free.
Yeah.
And,
There's that golf tournament every year.
and he does a golf. I did it last year.
Yeah.
I did last April. I did the golf tournament, and he does a Christmas show every year. They call it the Christmas Pudding Show, and he has a bunch of bands come, and so we've been friends for a long, long time. And Cheryl and Alice. Cheryl, his wife, is a major contributor
Yeah.
to his world, and we hung together when we were in England, year before last, and had a good time. And actually, after last year, I was so bad on the golf. I was embarrassingly bad. I hadn't played golf. We used to take our clubs out in the 80s, years ago, and I hadn't played golf for 20 years. And I went out there with it's like a fivesome.
Yeah.
So the foursome of guys who can actually play, and then everybody hits the ball, and then you pick who the best ball.
Right.
Well, they never picked my ball, ever. Half the time I whiffed.
They're like, "Are you hustling us?"
Oh, it was awful. And so I've been taking golf lessons, and I've actually could hit the ball now. I'm actually getting okay with hitting the ball. And I've been playing this little par 3 course in LA. So I'm just sitting I'm waiting. Alice, are you calling me for this?
I'm ready now.
I'm ready. They sent me a Christmas card this year, and I said, "Oh, Merry Christmas!" And I've been taking golf lessons.
Yes, for
I'll
Christmas
be ready.
this year.
Let me know.
Is it weird to hear, hear your music in things you're watching? Like, I remember there's an episode of Kate and Alec, if you remember that show.
Yeah.
Where the teenage daughter has a band and they play "Talk to You Later."
Really?
And it's like weird stuff like that where you're just like, what? That's my stuff. Like,
I don't know. I mean, that's not weird. It happened. Somebody just texted me the other day, and they said they were in Palm Springs at a hotel, and She's a Beauty came on in the elevator.
yeah.
Oh, good music. Music and elevators in Palm Springs. Oh.
That's kind of a good accomplishment.
Am I getting a check for that?
I don't know. Maybe.
Tracking
Yeah, I
that.
know. It's just sound exchange.
So I don't know.
Do you have I asked this for all musicians that I have on, do you have an all-time favorite TV theme song? So it's usually the first favorite song people have.
I've been singing it because I thought you would ask me that.
Oh, really?
Have Gun Will Travel.
It's Have Gun Will Travel? That is a good
Have
one.
Gun Will Travel is a card of a man.
Yeah.
Knight without armor in a savage land. A fast gun for hire and the calling wind. Have Gun Will Travel is a man called Aladdin.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's a lost art.
I know the theme songs were so great and everybody knew the words. It was great.
It told you the whole
Aladdin.
thing.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm a Green Acres guy.
Oh, Green Acres.
That's
Green Acres is a place for you. I knew all
Fantastic.
those songs.
I knew all
those songs. I was a huge, my mother was a singer. Before she got married in Omaha, my mother used to sing with big bands.
Oh, wow.
And when a big band, she sang with Duke Ellington.
Wow.
When a big band would come to town, for some reason they weren't carrying a singer, and they would find a singer in each town, and they would do begin the begin, and they would do the standards.
Right.
And my mother was the one they would get in Omaha, and so she was a great singer. And then she got married and she had kids and she stopped singing, but we would always sing around the house,
right.
Always. And like I remember when we got the soundtrack to West Side Story.
Yeah.
And oh God, I loved it. And we sang and sang and sang and sang. And then when I was a freshman in high school, I have to mention Joe Esley because Joe Esley changed my life. There was a group at Scottsdale High. There was a group called the Scottsdale Singers, and that was a choral group of alto, soprano, baritone, tenor, baritone, soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, and so it was a group of about maybe 40 people.
Wow!
And this guy who directed it was the head of the theater arts department. We had a big theater arts department, which nobody has anymore.
Yeah,
we had a huge auditorium that held about 2,000 people, a giant full-size stage, a whole backstage area to build sets, rooms to rehearse in.
Acoustically nice.
Unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And a guy named Joe Esley was the director. And Joe Esley would direct all the plays. I did musicals all through high school.
Yeah.
And he would direct all the plays, and he would direct this group called the Scottsdale Singers. And we were so good that we would go out to singing competitions around the state at other high schools and at other outboard competitions that didn't have anything to do with school. And it was a varsity singing group. And you
got a letter and everything?
Well, we had these green jackets that had like an emblem on it.
Right.
Green jacket. And we all wore green jackets with this Scottsdale emblem thing on it, which I still have my jacket.
Nice.
And so you had to audition to get in it. And when I was a freshman, the year before my freshman year of high school, I signed up to audition to get in Scottsdale Singers. And I sang Maria from West Side Story because I knew it all, and it's really high, and I sang it a cappella, and I got into the Scottsdale Singers as a freshman, and no one else had ever. I was the first one to ever be let into the varsity group as a freshman.
Wow, there's no JV for it.
No, there was no. It was either there was a freshman group. That the band, the guy who directed the marching band, he did the freshman group. Mr. Valentine, his name was, and the varsity. There was nothing in between that and the varsity group. And there was very few sophomores, but it was mostly juniors and seniors in Scottsdale Singers. But they let me in as a freshman, and I kind of got a lot, they would look at me like,
who's this kid?
Who's this kid, And we would do stuff like Handel's Messiah.
Wow.
Every year we would do Handel's Messiah, top to bottom, which is really complicated stuff.
Yeah.
And we would do Baroque to Bach, and we would do all these really complicated classical pieces, and little by little, he let me, do the solo in this area in Handel, and then little by little, I worked my way up, and he was, and then I would do, I was doing Music Man and Most Happy Fella and Sound of Music and Carousel and Cyrano de Bergerac, and I did all these plays. I played Little Abner as a 92-pound weakling, but he was always. He was always, on me. He was always, he would bust me for something. He was always busting me. Oh, hey, you sang that note flat. Or, and he would pick me out of the group of 40 and go, Johnny, they called me Johnny, okay, you're singing flat, you're singing shallow. And so finally, I'm just going, fuck, what the fuck,
Can't do this.
And so I went into his office once, and he was like a big fat guy, and it was weird. It was weird. And I went to his office, and Mr. Esley, I said, what are you always, why are you always, I'm trying so hard.
It's a horse. Oh, there you go.
No. 818 telemarketing. They call me every morning.
Oh, I get those at the same time every day.
Morning.
Yeah. And you block the number, and then it's different.
I blocked the number, and they switched. They call it from a different number.
Yep.
So I said, Mr. Why are you? And he went into this big thing. He goes, look. He goes, he says, the reason I'm on you all the time is because you can't let this slide.
Right.
You've got something that none of those other people have. You've got something. You cannot let this slide. You cannot take it for granted. You've got to work hard. And he kind of gave me this whole inspirational talk about, he goes, man, you're not just like all those other people. You've got something here that these other people don't have. You've got to, you can't let this go.
Yeah.
You've got to, and I kind of, whoa, really?
That's a lot of responsibility.
Well, okay. And I think it really affected me. When I was talking to, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a psychotherapist, and he goes, man, this, you were the firstborn, and you had a lot of responsibility, and your dad was on you all the time to do this and do that, and you didn't have really a path, and this guy changed your life.
Yeah.
You may have not realized it at the time, but that's why I'm a psychotherapist, because this shit affects you.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
This as a teenager, and here you are trying to make your way into high school and stand out. It's funny because when I was a freshman, I was a baseball player. My dad started Little League in Scottsdale, and so I played baseball since I was 8 years old. I played baseball, and I've always played ball, and I played football when I was a freshman, and I got crushed. I played the Pee Wee football team, and I played quarterback, and I just got crushed. And I dislocated my elbow, and I quit playing football. And then I quit playing. I quit everything because I wanted to do theater arts.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to. That's all I wanted to do is be in the theater arts department. But when the Beatles came out, I wanted long hair too.
Yes, yeah.
So all I could do. I mean, every day, the jocks wanted to beat me up.
Of course.
Because I had long hair.
Yeah.
And back then, long hair was, if it touched your collar.
neck, yeah.
I mean, back then, you couldn't wear Levi's to school. You had to wear slacks. You couldn't wear T-shirts. You had to wear a shirt with a button-down collar. And your hair couldn't touch your collar.
You barely had teenagers. You were like kids and adults. That was
Yeah.
you dressed like a businessman.
And so the jocks would wait after school to try to beat me up in the parking lot, and I would just stay in the theater arts department for like hours until they would all go home.
Practice
and I
till
would
they're
just
gone.
building sets and working on stuff or rehearsing or doing some, because we did like 3 plays a year.
Wow.
We did 2 musicals and a dramatic play. We did Student Prince, which was some drinking. We did Cyrano. I played Count de Guiche. I played the bad guy in Cyrano de Bergerac.
Which is a great part. You
Which
get
is a
to
great
really chew
part.
the scenery as that guy.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you got to meet in your professional life later that you knew from musicals or you watched on TV or that like you were kind of starstruck by the people you were friends by?
I used to be kind of friends with Dennis Hopper.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
he lived
was-
in Arizona, didn't he? For a while?
He did live in Arizona
Yeah.
for a while, and he lived in Venice for a
Yeah.
while, and I lived in Venice for a while. And Dennis Hopper was a pretty cool guy, and I met him, and I know Hugh Jackman, although he was really not somebody that I grew
Watched
up.
growing up, yeah.
I met a bunch of game show hosts. I met Merv Griffin, and I met.
Merv, a musician himself, wrote the Jeopardy theme.
We did?
He wrote that doo-doo-doo-doo.
Oh,
That's
wow.
like, he made more money from that than creating the show.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. But
So no one you were intimidated by? Like no one comes
No.
to mind? Like some people have that like humana person that they're like, really? That's so cute. I'm like,
No.
oh, it's,
no, I mean, I guess Bowie.
Yeah,
You know, Bowie was, when we went on tour with Bowie, he really liked me a lot. And a little too much, maybe.
much, yeah.
And it was a kind of intimidating, but, it's David Bowie.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's one of those people that there's so few people, like people I know who, knew Bowie or met Bowie or knew Elvis or met Elvis, and they always have this story. They don't, it's hard to imagine those are real people.
Yeah.
They're so iconic and they changed so much.
Yeah. I know Rod Stewart. He came to see us once when we played. Actually, it was with Alice Cooper.
Okay.
We played in '77. We opened for Alice at the Anaheim Stadium.
Okay.
It was a big tour, and the Tubes and Nazareth and Sha-Na-Na
wow.
and Alice. It was a big show.
So
in
that's a strange
1977.
lineup.
Yeah, it was very weird. And Rod came to the show because our manager guy, this guy Ricky Farr, was a Welshman. He's the son of Tommy Farr, the European heavyweight champion who fought Joe Louis.
Yeah.
And Ricky was our manager at the time. And Ricky had a sound and lights company and had never managed before, but he did Todd's production on tour. I mean, Rod Stewart's production on tour. So Rod Stewart came to the gig, and I got to meet him, and I thought, Rod Stewart, my God, my favorite all-time singer. And then we did my best friend is a guy named Richard Marx.
Oh yeah, you guys wrote Edge of a Broken Heart together.
Yes, and we've written like 100 songs.
I love
I've
Richard
had
Marx.
3 or 4 hits with him that we wrote for him. We wrote for the Vixen. We wrote a song for the Tubes. We wrote a country hit for a band called Emerson Drive.
Oh yeah.
And Richard knew Rod Stewart somehow. I don't know, but we did a benefit show. Don, one of his guitar player got cancer, and Don, I can't remember Don's last name. I can't remember Don's last name, but he was Rod's guitar player, and he had no health insurance. Of
course.
And he was a young guy with no health insurance and this massive 6-figure health bill.
Yeah.
And so we got together and we did a benefit show for him at a club called Billboard Live on Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Rod and Richard and me. And the three of us did a bunch of songs together. And I mean, I didn't get to sing with Rod Stewart, but on the same bill.
Yes, that's good enough.
We raised a lot of money for Don, and he ended up beating it.
Oh, wow, that's great.
The money helped, and he paid his bills, and he beat cancer.
Wow.
And I actually saw him. I go to the gym. I go to Gold's in Venice still, and even though I moved with my ex, we're getting married again. Me and Elizabeth have been together for like 25 years, on and off and on and off. We got married, got divorced, and got back together and broke up.
It's a circle of life, you know.
On and off, on and again and again. She got married again, she got divorced, and I had a girlfriend, then I got. So finally, we just said, "Well, this is bullshit. Let's just do it.
We know this. We can do this.
There's no secrets.
Yeah.
There's I finally 5 months ago I moved. We bought a house together about 5 or 6 years ago in Beverly Hills, or not actually Beverly Hills, adjacent.
Yeah,
they call
Sherman
it.
Oaks sort of.
It's not over the top of the mountain,
other side.
on the other side.
Yeah.
It's still on the Beverly
Hollywood
Hills side, but it's beyond the city limits.
Right.
And so we got a good deal on a place, and she moved in, and I didn't want to leave Venice.
Yeah.
And finally I've been going to Gold's in Venice, working out, and finally I just said, okay, I'm sick of Venice. I can't even park.
Yeah.
It's
crazy down there.
I hate it. And so I ended up moving there about 5-6 months ago.
That's a big change. That's a big cultural change.
Big cultural change. I hadn't lived with her in a long, long time, and so it's been good and bad, but mostly good.
Yeah.
And we really love each other, and really. Oh, and here she is now.
Here she is now.
That's her.
That's her son.
Okay. I've got 3 polo horses. They're at pasture right now. This one is Cassie, that's Doublemint, and that's Cadillac. But yeah, I've been playing polo and I kind of I went from playing baseball to playing fast pitch softball. For years I played fast pitch, and then fast pitch kind of died away and it became a women's sport.
Yeah.
And most of the guys switched to slow pitch, and I didn't want to play. It was just too, slow pitch is this massive 300-pound guy hits the ball 400 feet in the air, but the guy's waiting for it. And,
basic physics.
Messing out.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, I didn't. So I switched to polo, and I got back on the horse again, which, it was great because I hadn't been riding for 30 years.
That's a long time not to ride.
Yeah. And so I got back started riding and playing. I've been playing for about 15 or 16 years, and
I didn't even know they did indoor polo there. That's pretty cool.
They call it indoor polo, but it's actually outdoor polo is 300 yards by 150 yards on grass.
Yeah.
And indoor, it's like arena football.
Okay.
It's 100 yards by 50 yards in an arena with an 8-foot wall on dirt.
Okay.
And there's in Burbank, there is a roof on it, but there's no sides. But ours is just an open arena, and they call it arena polo.
Yes.
And it's a quicker game. You don't ever get going as fast as you do on the grass because it's only 100 yards. Right. And then there's a lot of stopping and turning and coming back and flipping around and going back the other way.
It's a fast sport.
It's fast, and it's a bigger ball. Instead of the polo ball, which is about the same as the baseball, it's about the size of a softball.
Yeah.
And it's inflated. It's like a little soccer ball.
Oh, so that bounces.
So it bounces off the wall.
Oh, okay.
And the wall's in play.
I feel like I want to go watch some polo.
So you can watch it bounce off, and then at each end of the arena, there's like an inset portion painted green, and that's the goal.
Okay.
It's inset about that far, and that's the goal.
I feel like they should air that on TV. I would watch that.
Well, they do. They don't. There's not much polo on TV.
No, even like ESPN3, they don't have
not really.
They'd rather show strongman competitions.
No, they don't. Yeah, right. They don't do much polo, and polo is a big deal in Argentina. It's like the deal. It's like kids grow up playing polo instead of growing up playing baseball.
And Jai-Alai is so huge in South America.
And Jai-Alai. And now there's. They're cloning a lot. There's a guy named the greatest polo player in the world, the best player in the world. His name is Adolfo Cambiaso, and he's getting on. He's a 10. Polo is ranked from -2 to 10 in terms of skill level. I'm a 1, but I'm a recreational
You're in positive
player.
section.
Yes. And Adolfo's a 10, and there's a number of 10s in the world, but he's like a 10-10.
Yeah, he's the 10 of 10s.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's developed a cloning, and he's got a herd now of about 40 clones, where he's taken his all-time greatest polo horse and cloned her. And had more and more, and now he's got like 40 of these clones. Margarita,
cloned army of horses.
A cloned army of polo horses.
That's the future we live in today,
and they're just spectacular. And he gets he makes for a tournament for like a 4-week, like the Pacific Coast Open or the U.S. Open. Usually they're 4 weekends, and there's about 8 teams or 10 teams. He gets $1 million.
Wow.
For a month-long tournament.
And
he brings all of his horses in, and he brings his guys in, and the guy is like unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, he can pick the ball up off the ground and carry it, bouncing on his mallet, running down the field full blast,
like it's
and
breathing.
Then toss it up and hit it in the air.
Yeah.
It's a completely different game than I play.
Something to aspire to.
Right. I think it was a little late. But he probably started when he was 4.
Oh, I bet. Right out of the womb on a pony.
Well, thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
It's been fun.
Well, thank you so much, and have a great gig tonight. And it's been great talking to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ken. It was fun. It was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Oh, baby, I see you in my TV set. Yeah, baby, I see you in my TV set. I cut your head off and put it in my TV set.
There you go. That's Fee. Has to write a book, right? I mean, the stories are amazing. It's so strange to me that I know anyone who's interacted with David Bowie in any capacity. Like I could just go down a rabbit hole of disbelief, which is what I'm going to call my autobiography. Anyway, thanks again for listening. You can email me if you have guest requests at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com, or really about anything, or ken@icanread.com. You can also send us a message on social media. What was that noise? Send us a message on social media at TV Guidance on Instagram and Twitter, or at Kenneth W. Reed on the same. Just search us on Facebook if you'd like to do that. And that is about it. I'm going to go outside because it's been a long, hard winter, and just wander around in the springtime air. So, as I said, next week I'll be going to Los Angeles, hopefully getting some good episodes, so look forward to that. And we'll see you again next time on a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.